We're going a bit different here for our comparison because we're not just going to show a top of the range with a top of the range. This thing is cheaper than the Volkswagen Amarok. So this is the mid-spec style. We have a full review out on the channel about this car already. This thing though starts at just under $77,000. Add this metallic paint, that's $1,000. And you add the $3,000 leather interior and now you're into $81,000. That is a mid-spec Amarok versus right now the top of the range Ford Ranger Wildtrak. This thing here actually starts a little bit more expensive, 78 grand. But when you option the only optional pack, which is called the premium pack, that nets you these matrix LED lights and some LED lights at the rear and also auxiliary switches on the inside, then it actually takes you to less money than that.
So the top of the range is cheaper than the mid-spec.
Correct. And there are differences elsewhere, which we will again come to, but that's one of the first things you need to know is that you are going to be paying a tax for having a Volkswagen badge. It's just how it is. But how do they look? Well, as you can see, they are wildly different. You've still got some cool LED C-clamp design headlights. These come as standard with matrix LEDs, by the way, whereas of course you have to option that on this one. You do have a nice and subtle grille there. I really like that on the Amarok. It definitely looks premium. VW badge there. And you've also got the 360 camera. It's a really good setup. Same with the Ford Ranger though. Really nice grille, big Ford badge, and that camera set up there, but they do look really, really different, I think, from the front. What do you prefer from the front?
I actually definitely prefer the Ranger. I think it looks so aggressive, so cool.
I think I have to agree. And actually, let us know what you guys think down in the comments section. Just on looks alone, what do you prefer, the Ranger or the Amarok? Because I think I prefer the Ranger, but subjective. What about the side of the Amarok though? Because that is quite different again. As you can see here, you've got these 18-inch wheels. Now the Ranger also gets 18-inch alloy wheels, but they're wrapped in all-terrain tires because that is the off-road model, but it's actually the best of the Ranger range at the moment. You've also got different suspension setups, and you'll see that when we take this thing for a drive. It's very different in how they drive. Otherwise, it's very much a dual cab ute. Looks very much the same. Use the same materials for this side step here. 360 camera there as well. You do get privacy glass on the back. It's at the rear though that these things are pretty damn different. So if you come over here, you're going to notice a distinct lack of any sort of side step. Whereas on the Ford Ranger, you do have a side step. So that's actually easier to get into the rear. You've also got this sports bar here, which looks okay. But the thing you have to remember, guys, is that you are paying more for the style, but you don't get that roll top tonneau cover. You only get that on the top of the range Aventura, which, I don't know, that's like a pretty big cost. The thing you're not going to be too disappointed with is the design, because again, completely subjective. I really like the way that the Amarok looks, but again, I just think I prefer the way that the Ford Ranger looks, man.
I actually agree, and especially with this paint color, it looks so cool.
Yeah, but like that paint color, like, to put this in perspective, that's a $1,000 option, that's a $750 option. So you are paying, what, 30% more?
Tax.
Interesting. Comes from the same factory, don't forget that. If we open this up though, you get the same light tailgate for both. It is exactly the same for the Ford Ranger. But actually, here's another benefit for the Ford Ranger. It has been raining today. It's been a terrible, terrible day. As you can see, the back of the Amarok is all wet. And that's why we have all of our stuff in the back of the Ranger.
Safe and dry.
It's safe and dry. And when you lock it, it locks the whole thing. Of course, if you press a button here, boop, the roll top tonneau goes all the way to the back. You can get that in the Aventura, but then you're spending just a lot of money. And we will be reviewing that one soon with the 4-cylinder petrol engine. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I think that's going to be a really interesting review. In the interest of time, we've overlaid the specs on the screen, but as you will see, the Ranger has more space inside of it. And I think it's actually got a better design, especially between the wheel arches. So let's check out the interior. Now, before we go into talking about the Amarok, we need to baseline ourselves with the Ranger. We have spent a total of about 2.5 months now with the Ford Ranger and the Everest and the Raptor, so I'm so familiar with the interior of this thing now. It's almost like my own car at this point. I really like the aesthetic of the Ranger, especially when you start to consider that this thing at the moment is top of the range and it's also a utility. I think they do a lot right. I really like the material choices. You've got some soft touch materials dotted around, especially in the places that matter. You've got a really cool storage area there. This glove box is split. and it just works seamlessly. You got cup holders on both sides, including 2 cup holders here. The ergonomics in here work really, really well. Everything is just really purposefully placed and nothing feels like it shouldn't be there. I do like this display, although I have experienced some freezing with it, which is a bit of a shame. There is quite a lot going on. You do have physical aircon controls. That's a good thing. And really that's the majority of your function anyway, but you can also control it from the screen, though you don't have to. Up in front of you, you get a good enough digital instrument cluster. No, it's not the nicest, but it shows all the information you really need, to be honest, so I'm not going to complain. I will say that the seats, the more I sit in them, they just feel a bit basic, a bit, I don't know, like the leather is not the highest quality, man.
Nah, it's not my favorite, but I love the stitching. I just think it looks so cool.
Very cool. I really like the orange stitching around here as well. The aesthetic is cool. And of course, because this has the premium pack, you also get these auxiliary switches here built in. So you can connect up a light bar or whatever, and it will hook up straight to one of these. You don't have to go, you know, ripping things out and trying to install new buttons. It's kind of just a jack of all trades and kind of a master of all of them too. I've got like almost 0 complaints. Also the B&O sound system in here, really, really good sound system.
Very strong.
Very strong. Should we check out the back seats?
Let's do it.
All right, so what about the back seats? Well, I'm 5'11", heaps of leg room, toe room, and headroom, so no problem for me fitting back here, which you will find in some other utes. Again, I'm not sure I love the leather, the feel of it. It's okay, probably hard wearing. You do have a couple of air vents and a USB-A port and USB-C, so your kids are gonna be happy back here, that's important. Pull this down, you've got some hard leather, and you've also got a couple of cup holders, but nothing to complain about, that's for sure. Also, if you lift up the back seats, you do have a bit of underfloor storage. You can also pull the backrest forward, and then you've got access to your ISOFIX points, but also you've got your tire changing kit there too. I will say the one thing about this interior is it feels very dark and very drab. The more I sit in here, I really like the contrast stitching, but it's not inspiring.
No, it's a sea of black. For sure.
It's a sea of black plastic. Let's check out the Amarok though. So just like the exterior, Volkswagen say that their team of designers were completely separate to the Ford Ranger. And I can believe that because there are some really good things and some, I would say, pretty bad things about the interior of the Amarok. Let's start with the good though. The contrasting materials, the bright headliner, it feels a lot nicer in here. It feels like a European car. Right?
No, I completely agree.
It doesn't feel like you're sitting in some, you know, budget car. It feels super premium. You've got soft touch materials that actually extend the length of the dash up here as well. It feels really just refined and nice. That's kind of at the surface level though, because as you start to dig, you start to notice a few things that are a little bit of a shame. For example, you've got this faux wood around the interior, but it's not a very good faux wood. It just looks tacky in my opinion. It also isn't built very well because you can see here the panel gap just kind of extends as you go along this upper tract here. This is a split glove box, so you get a bit of extra space up there. Down here, you've got a pretty big glove box. That's good. Other build quality issues though, I've noticed in the door, next to the door as well, you've got some plastic just poking out. Also like this center armrest here, which does feel nice, but you can see that it's pretty flimsy. And then it's got a latch here, which you press to open, but you can just as easily pop it open.
Ugh, that's ridiculous.
So there's some things in here that I think a bit of better attention to detail could be put towards it. And maybe because it is just a lighter interior, you can kind of spot these a bit easier in the Amarok. The other way that I can believe that this has been designed in isolation from the Ford Ranger is that this thing just has worse ergonomics on the interior in specific areas. For example, the cup holders are back here rather than up front. As a result, you have to like really weirdly get your hand in there to be able to get a coffee or whatever. Whatever's sitting in there is not easy to get. So that's weird. Also, the shifter has been placed like in the center and the tow controls have been placed into this area here. So if your phone is there, it's actually really hard to get it out when the car is in park. Again, weird ergonomics. And also for whatever reason, even though there's a huge blank area on the right, they've put the headlight controls right where the cup holders would be in the Ford Ranger. So you can't even have the cup holders there. I mean, you could have one over there, but for whatever reason, they don't put it in. I don't know, man. That kind of stuff just like, it just seems like an oversight. And maybe it's not a good thing that these teams worked in isolation if they did, because there's just some things that they just should have kept, right?
100%. There's so much dead space around that shifter.
But it's not all bad because, as I said, when you sit in here, it does feel more premium. One of the things that they've done is they've replaced the seats from the Ranger, and that's a huge thing because when you get inside of here, you feel like you're sitting in a European car. This does have that $3,000 optional extra leather. You don't actually need it because it comes with a micro suede otherwise that looks amazing, but this feels so good, way better leather quality in here than in the Ranger. You've also got better bolstering, I've noticed, on the sides. It is just a really comfortable place to sit. Not to mention the steering wheel as well. It feels like a Volkswagen steering wheel. It just has like a nicer leather to it. It's really nice. Up in front of you, you do get a 12-inch digital instrument cluster, again, way nicer than the Ford Ranger. It's just super high resolution, responsive, and shows all the information you could ever want. I really, really like it. Also, some very cool animations when you switch between your drive modes. That's cool. The instrument cluster is a bit of a mixed bag, again, because of ergonomics. For whatever reason, Volkswagen seem hell-bent on putting the climate controls inside of the display. So even though the Ford Ranger, you have it nicely displayed there, here you have to go into the infotainment display to access it, which is just annoying. It's just extra steps for no reason, and it's distracting. It's not good when you're driving on the road. You have a nice storage area up here though. I do like that compared to the Ranger. So really, in summary, when you're driving the Amarok, it does feel like a more premium place to be. But is it worth paying the Volkswagen tax to have that? I'm really struggling to say yes.
Exactly, and especially for a car like this, that is a utility vehicle.
Exactly. Let us know what you guys think though, down in the comment section. Do you prefer the more rugged interior of the Ford Ranger, or is it worth spending the extra cash for the Amarok? Let's check out the back seats. Man, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that if you're regularly carrying people in the back seats, just get the Amarok.
It's actually way nicer.
The seats are completely different in the back. They actually extend out more, so you sit at a better angle, and it's still not impactful no matter your height. So I'm 5'11", still heaps of legroom, headroom, and toe room back here. So that's fantastic. Really nice leather too. You've also got this very difficult to open center armrest. I don't know, man. But you've got a couple of cup holders there, and this is nice and soft leather too. The thing I'm disappointed about is kind of twofold. This has a 12-volt socket in the back and not the USB-A and USB-C port that you get in the Ranger, which is frankly more useful because you have to have an adapter for the 12-volt socket, which is just extra cost. Also, in the back, you have a couple of air vents, which are nice, and you get extra map pockets, which is good. But for whatever reason, the tire kit is underneath this back seat. You do still get a full-size spare wheel on both cars, but for whatever reason, it's under the seat here, so you don't get that storage underneath the seat. But apart from the seats, quality is really the same. Scratchy materials, it's fine. It's fine back here. But I think the biggest differences can be seen on road. So Jacob, let's talk about that. Volkswagen claim that the Amarok is sportier than a Ford Ranger. So what better way to test that out than by launching it? Let's put the car into 4A, which gives us 4-wheel drive. We're gonna brake boost launch it to build up boost in that turbo, and you're gonna fist me.
Let's do this. Oh,
Oof.
God, that feels pretty good off the line.
Man,
Come on.
this thing is quick.
Oh,
0 to 100 in 8.15 seconds. Let's test the Ranger. All right, friend, all the exact same settings for the Ford Ranger. Fist me, and fist me good. Build up boost as well.
Let's see.
Here we go.
Oh, that feels good.
Feels pretty good.
Feels the same, to be honest.
Even though it's wet, it hooks up pretty well.
Come on.
A little bit slower.
Almost the same though.
But yeah, within the margin of error. 0 to 100 in 8.39 seconds. Let's see how else it compares. Alrighty, friend, we're gonna baseline our comparison between how these two drive with the car we've driven the most.
I feel like we've been in this car a lot lately.
Oh, a lot. I've worked it out. Now it's actually 2 months and 2 weeks that I've spent in Ranger products, whether that's the Ranger, Everest, or the Ranger Raptor. So
Jeez.
I am pretty well versed in how these things drive.
Oh yeah.
Let me give you my impressions. I wholeheartedly stand by that this is the best driving ute in the segment. That isn't taking into consideration the Amarok, which we will get to. But when you're just driving along, it feels so refined in here. You put your foot down.
The transmission's great.
Transmission is great. Now, powering both the Ford Ranger and the Volkswagen Amarok are the same choices of engine. For this one, we have the V6. 184 kilowatt of power, 600 newton meters of torque. And because we have the V6, when we press 4A here on the drive modes, it means that we actually get a permanent four-wheel drive system. It is still rear-wheel drive biased, but it will send power to the front wheels when it needs to. And as a result, this thing, even on a horrible day like today, it can just put all of its power down. And the thing that I love the most about the Ford Ranger is just how comfy it is.
It's actually almost luxurious in ride quality for a ute.
For a ute, like it's unbelievable how comfortable it is. You really can just sit back, relax, and this thing will essentially just glide you down the road. I really like it. It's quiet in here too. And the cabin, it just has that, I don't know, it just exudes quality, you know?
There's a lot of soft touch materials around.
A lot.
There's not much road noise at all.
There's not much road noise at all. But when you're turning a corner,
oh,
look, you don't have much road feedback.
no, it's a bit disconnected.
It's a little bit disconnected. Still have plenty of power. Oh,
It's not exactly a bad thing in a ute, though.
It's not a bad thing at all. Like, you know, it's a ute. It's not a sports car, let's be honest. And it can still do, I don't know, around
pretty great.
Country driving pretty well.
Yeah.
Give it the sauce and it responds pretty good.
It's not going to be as fun as a Raptor
No.
with Baja mode, but who cares?
Alrighty, we're at Saucy Corner. Let's see how it goes up our little performance test. Tickle my tiny little pickle.
It's been tickled. Oh, still pulls pretty hard.
That first hit is like almost face melting. It's like torquey as all heck. All right, so the steering is pretty light, and we've had to cross our hands over here.
Okay, not the best grip there.
Not the best grip.
Had to check we're in four-wheel drive mode there.
It is wet though. Let's see how it goes up. Bit of understeer.
Okay, I mean, not terrible.
Hooks up and it's fine.
But
yeah.
not the best.
It's not inspiring.
No.
I wouldn't call it inspiring at all. Now let's see just how the Amarok differs.
Well, it's meant to be sportier.
All right, friend, now we've switched over into the Volkswagen Amarok, believe it or not.
Can you even tell?
If I went like this, you'd be pretty hard pressed.
Yeah.
I actually think it's a little louder in here.
Now that you mentioned it, I think it might be.
I feel like I'm hearing more of the road.
Yeah. Are the windows open?
No, all closed, all closed. The other thing that I immediately notice, and maybe you do too, friend, is that it is, I feel the road a lot more.
It's jittery.
It's jittery. I genuinely feel everything in the road, which maybe not a bad thing for everyone in the sense that we have a corner here. Looks like a pretty saucy corner.
Let's be engaged by the
Put
feeling.
the car into 4 auto.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's better.
Oh, that is pretty damn good. And so around a corner, this thing does feel definitely more planted, but kind of at the expense of just driving around. Like I just feel
comfort.
like I'm kind of being pushed around quite a lot. Quite a lot.
And there's no adaptive damper settings. We haven't got it in sport mode or anything. It just is like this.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there is no sport mode. The other thing that you notice is that the steering is way heavier in the Amarok, which I actually think I'm kind of preferring at the moment, because whereas the Ford Ranger is a little bit vague, you know, where you point this thing is where it's going, you know? There's no two ways about it. And we'll see just how it compares up at Saucy Corner. And yes, it is more fun around corners, if you want to put it that way. It still has plenty of body roll.
Oh, you sound like you're having fun, bro. Oh, jeez.
Really, when you push it, it ends up performing very similarly to the Ford Ranger in that sense.
They're both going to understeer. Like, you can't escape that.
But it gives you that kind of perception of being a little bit more sporty. Here's the thing, though. It's still, like, top of the class in terms of its dynamics.
I was about to say, like, compare it to any other ute.
Yeah,
it still drives more comfortably.
Oh, unreal. Unreal.
We're just spoilt at the moment comparing it to the Ranger.
We are. Let's go up Saucy Corner, tickle my little tiny pickle. Boom.
Oh! Okay.
Same torquiness of that engine. Really great powertrain.
Oh, I love this engine, man.
Let's see how it goes up our first corner. Oh, we do have to cross our hands here.
A bit hairy.
But it's still far heavier, the steering.
Oh my God.
And then our second little hairpin.
Ooh, God, it's sunk in there.
Traction really just pushed in. Here's how I would kind of describe how they drive comparatively. The Volkswagen Amarok kind of gives you that confidence that you can push it a bit harder, but once you do push it just as hard, they perform identically.
It's the same.
They perform identically. Yes, this has stiffer dampers, so that means that you do get that kind of, I don't know, when you really start to turn in, that's when you really start to notice the differences. But as soon as you take it all the way, the platform kind of takes over, and the limitations of the ute platform takes over.
100%.
And you start to really notice that, yeah, look.
So do you need that extra sportiness?
Do you need the extra sportiness and that Volkswagen price tax that you get on this thing? Let's talk about it in our final thoughts.
Let's do it.
Alrighty, so final thoughts. Which is better? Well, in my opinion, when you go cost for cost, the Ford Ranger just wins out. You do just get more for less versus the Volkswagen Amarok, which definitely does feel more premium on the inside. There are some issues on the inside though, which I don't love. Those ergonomic issues really irk me. But otherwise, when you're actually sitting in it, those seats, man, they're so comfortable. It's the ride quality that really irks me though, especially with the Volkswagen Amarok. It is just too firm, in my opinion, when you're driving around town or even on the highway. The Ranger is just a nicer place to be. So if it were me, I'd probably go for the Ranger. Jacob, what do you think?
100% for all those reasons you just said. I'm taking the Ranger.
Yeah, I think so.
Hà Thành Ford.